Are you starting the new school semester soon? There are many factors to consider before borrowing for the upcoming academic year. In this video, we're going to cover what you need to know before you borrow student loans. And I'm Megan from Student Loan Planner, a consultant for the team. And let's go ahead and dive straight into how we can exhaust all other financial options before borrowing. So you want to find ways to reduce the need for financial aid or to reduce the cost of financial or cost of attendance. So first and foremost, you definitely want to make sure you're filling out FAFSA. FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, and generally it's due by June 30th of each year, but your school might have a different deadline for that to be in by. So that application is going to let you know what federal grants you might have available to you, which is money that gets applied to your cost of attendance that you don't have to pay back. So that's really important to see if we're eligible for. And then it also lets you know what types of federal student aid you have available to you as well. So we'll touch on that here in a second. But other ways to reduce the need for financial aid would be to pursue or to look into state-based or profession-based scholarships. So if we know we're going to law school, there are organizations out there that provide financial aid or scholarship opportunities for law students. So you want to see if you can find some of those opportunities that you fit within, and make that kind of your part-time job up until you get to school time. Scholarship money is money you don't have to pay back. So that's a great way to reduce the cost of attendance too. Also look into what opportunities the college itself has. If they have scholarships you could look into, or if they have work study programs. This can be pretty common for, especially for undergrad. I see it in graduate schools too, but work study is where you work for the school in some capacity, some kind of administration role or administrative role. And then that work gets applied to the cost of tuition or attendance as well. So again, we're working to reduce that cost of attendance, which means we don't have to borrow as much or we don't have to pay as much for school. So also other earned income opportunities. This would be more so for undergrad. Graduate school, it's really difficult to work at the same time while going to school. A lot of programs actually discourage people from working while they're going to graduate school, but undergrad there's plenty of opportunity to get a part-time job or again do the work study program where you're earning income that can be applied to the cost of attendance to reduce that cost, or to subsidize it in some way. Once we've exhausted all financial options to reduce the cost of attendance, you want to maybe consider federal student aid. So right now, we're actually at really historically low federal interest rates for the 2020 and 2021 academic years. So you have access to federal aid, which will come in either a form of a subsidized loan, an unsubsidized loan, or a plus loan. So those are the three types that you could be presented with. Subsidized loans are issued based on financial need. So that's where the FAFSA application comes in, where it tells you if you have access to those types of loans. Subsidized loans do not accrue interest while you're in school. So that's a big deal. And subsidized can only be issued to undergrad borrowers. So that's something to know. The interest rate for subsidized loans right now is 2.75%. So really low. Now, next in line is unsubsidized loans. These can be issued to both undergrad or graduate students. There are loan limits for how much you can borrow in unsubsidized loans. Their interest rate right now is 4.3%. There is no financial need availability for having access to these unsubsidized loans. And then for graduate school, you have a larger loan cap to how much you can borrow. You can borrow up to $20,500 for unsubsidized loans for a graduate degree. Undergrad is less, depending on the year that you're in school. But generally, pretty darn low interest rates compared to where we've seen them historically for undergrad and then for coming into graduate school. Now, on the flip side, for graduate school, you will have access to graduate plus loans. So these are for if we have capped out at that 20,500 limit for the unsubsidized loans that we have available to us. and we need to spill over into another bucket of aid, graduate plus loans, you can borrow up to the cost of attendance, and their interest rates right now are 5.3%. So, actually, really low compared to where they have been too. I was seeing them closer to 7 or 7.5% previously. Now we're down to 5.3%. So, still a good option if we needed to borrow above and beyond that unsubsidized limit for grad school. Now, parent plus loans are something also you could entertain. That would be for undergrad. So parent plus loans are not available to graduate students. That's what the graduate plus loans are for. But for undergrad, you could have access to parent plus loans, which is a federal student loan a parent can borrow on behalf of the student. So those interest rates are at 5.3%. Again, really low compared to where I was seeing them. It could be a good option to entertain if we need more funding for our undergraduate degree. So good news, again, interest rates are really darn low compared to where they have been. So in the past, depending on someone's path post graduation and how much or what their payment plan was going to be post graduation, we would recommend shopping kind of the private market and comparing to the federal for some scenarios. But now private loans are just really hard to compete with these federal loans because interest rates are so low. So right now we are generally saying go ahead and borrow federal because the interest rates are lower. It's not based on credit, and the interest rate is what it is. It's locked in and fixed right now. Whereas private loans, it is based on credit, off of credit history to determine that interest rate for you. And just in general, private student loans don't have the flexibility of repayment options post graduation. So that's something to keep in mind. We don't want to back ourselves into a corner with private student loans to not have access to income driven opportunities post graduation for the repayment plan or forgiveness opportunity if that's something that's going to be relevant to you. So those are the different types of aid you could pursue, a little bit about the differences there. Let's talk about some factors to think about before borrowing money for college. So one, will your university be holding in-person classes? And is that important to you? Two, what degree path have you chosen? Where are we going with our career choice? Three, what's your graduation date? That'll help you map out how much you are going to be borrowing and then when we're going to be entering repayment. And fourth, will your profession be impacted by the coronavirus in the future? So that is important to think about because we found out really quickly this past year that a lot of professions are not pandemic proof. They might be recession proof, but not pandemic proof. So has anything changed in the profession you're pursuing? And then lastly, think about, is it worth taking a gap year? That could be okay. If your university is not having in-person classes, that's something you prefer, or you feel like the experience might be different than maybe a normal year without COVID. Maybe taking a gap year could be worth it to just reset and then hop right in once things are a little bit more back to normal, more people are vaccinated, and all things are looking up. So last question for you, or what you might be thinking is, should I be taking out a student loan this fall? So if you've exhausted all options to reduce that cost of attendance, consider going federal for borrowing. And again, we tell folks to consider federal because of just the flexibility that federal student loans provide when it comes to repayment time. So we probably suggest avoid private student loans right now unless you're able to snag a really low interest rate. But undergrad at 2.75% for those subsidized loans is going to be really hard to beat. And if you value some flexibility, going federal can be the better way to go because you can always go private later. So just keep that in mind. Going federal now doesn't lock you into staying federal forever. You can always refinance later post graduation if that's the path that makes most sense for you. And if you need to tap into plus loans to cover the cost of attendance, either parent plus loans or graduate plus loans, generally for graduate students, I think the plus loan route is the way to go. For parent plus loans, for undergrad loans, if we need above and beyond what the student can borrow under their own name, maybe explore private lenders just in case they're offering something lower than 5.3%. But those are some things to keep in mind when it comes to prioritizing what types of aid to pursue. So, if you need help navigating this, we do offer pre debt consults to walk through your path, what types of aid could make more sense for you to pursue in regards to how that's going to look like post graduation. So, we can map out, based on your career, your potential income, and the potential balance you might be graduating with, what is this going to look like in repayment? And what decisions can we make now to set us up for the most flexibility later and a really efficient option come repayment time. So it's never too late to know what strategies there are to pay off federal student loans really fast too. So if you already have student loans, or if you just want to get an idea of how in the future you can pay off these loans really fast, go check out our next video on just how to pay off federal student loans as fast as possible with Travis. And I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks for tuning in.